On the middle of July 17, 1970, 5 prisoners were serving life sentences at Dorchester Prison in Canada's New Brunswick. Jack Fisher, age 27, and John Lee Parker, Sam Wetmore, age 32, and George, age 36. The ages of Lemuel Fleming and Hannington are 41. They made a mistake while trying to flee across a deserted farm, or so they thought. 20 kilometers from the prison, after 2 days, 2 of the prisoners revealed the specifics of what occurred to them at that farm. This narrative is being told by one of the prisoners who finds John Lee Parker guilty. The boys and I had been organizing our escape for months. We intended to flee to America if we could, if there were no complications. We were aware that we needed to remove ourselves as far as possible. We left during the midst of the night. I believe it was about 2 in the morning. Once outside the fortifications, we headed north and intended to head west once we arrived beyond the Cook River Memorial Ramp. I'm not sure how long or how far we ran. It felt lengthy, but the total was increasing like a farm. When exhaustion became apparent, we were hungry, thirsty, and thought if we could make it enough running, we might have a little respite. As we approached the property, I was able to observe it. It seemed to be ancient and deteriorating, not been used for many years. The plants in the home seemed unclean. The area around the home was overgrown. The barn seemed as if it might collapse in on itself. We were uncertain whether someone was still living there. So we walked gently up to the house and cautiously knocked. When we approached the target, we agreed that 3 of us would visit the residence's rear entrance in case somebody in the home made the decision to attempt and escape the return, and the 2 others would rap on the door to check on who was home. If anybody was present, our strategy was to restrain them in order to get something to consume food and liquids before moving on sprinting. I took 2 of the lads and headed to the rear door while the other lads waited for them to check to see whether anybody hurried out the door. After a little while, the door abruptly opened, revealing Jack. He said that nobody was inside the residence, therefore the remainder of us could begin seeking for some meals and a beverage. The house's interior was just as filthy as the outside was smelly and dirty, musty, like some untamed creatures having resided there for a while. We looked everywhere for food, and everything we discovered were many meat cans and legumes. Inside the home, the faucet wasn't working. Jack instructed Sam to go outside and see whether a well was close by. It took 10 minutes before Sam's shout to go could be heard. Here we are now. We all started to rush out the back door. Once outside, Samuel was heard once again. "Enter the barn right now." We saw as we dashed in the direction of the barn, before the barn doors were slightly ajar. Before entering, we stopped for a while, glancing at one another, uncertain of what to anticipate. We were already anxious and restless. The first person inside the barn was me. It was a little gloomy, but my eyes adjusted as soon as I walked inside. In front of me, I could see Sam in the shadows, seeing an odd expression on his face. I suddenly saw anything out of the ordinary. I had a glimpse of what seemed to be a guy standing a few meters apart from Sam. As I turned to face his direction, I could see that he was indeed standing next to a guy there, glaring at him. His hair was long and gray, reaching beyond his shoulders, seeming to be in his 60s, while the remaining lads trailed in behind. They came to a complete halt in front of me. Nevertheless, when they saw the guy, we remained there, staring at Sam and the guy for a little period of time before Jack inquired, "Who are you, old man? Do you reside here?" The guy merely carried on without responding, looking at me and without saying anything. A minute passed before Jack inquired once again, "Who are you, and whether you are a resident here?" One another minute passed before the elderly guy turned his head gently, becoming glancing at Jack and answering in a composed voice, "I do reside here, and I have for a lengthy period of time." The elderly guy seemed to have a little accent that I was having trouble identifying the instant. Then Jack said, "Sam, George, take that located chair there, and some rope to bind the elderly guy." Knowing Jack's anger well, they both quickly went to get a chair, whatever was close. and obtaining some baling string when they seized and fastened the ancient guy to the chair. He made no attempt to resist or speak up. He keeps focusing on Jack within his face, expressionless. Something about this guy seemed off, I thought. When I was a child, my father killed my mother. 14 and was my siblings and my fiend. Therefore, identifying evil had become secondary. I confined my mind to nature. Despite seeming weak in front of others, I was not what I was of the lads intending to carry out. Jack then gave Sam instructions to go get the canned food in the home and questioned him about finding a well with water in it. As Sam departed, Jack looked in the direction of the elderly guy and inquired about your narrative. How can you, elderly guy, live in such a hellhole? At first, the elderly guy didn't say anything, only sat there scowling at Jack. When he did say anything, it was, "Allow me to share a tale with you guys, as it seemed like I might stay here for a spell. I was born in a very distant place called France, owned by sister. About the same age as you, as a young guy, I think that a horrible incident occurred to me. Because of that, I've been unable to pass away. I wish for death instead of fearing it. Every day that goes by is another day that I must stay on this earth that God has abandoned. Based on your retired gentleman's example, I can't see the kind of company you run or the plans you have. Have I not asked you to go already?" At that moment, Sam entered without a smile, with the canned goods and a pail of water. Everyone gave a slight leap, and Jack made, given the circumstances, claiming, "Crazy old man Sam brings me water and snacks." The elderly man's words and mannerisms said, "I was scared." This was not how someone insane would act, speaks, or acts. I turned to face the elderly guy, who then his head fell. He remained silent. Next, we moved to a spot where we could sit and observe how we passed as we ate around the food can, exchanging what not much we had. The other lads engaged in light-hearted talk about their goals throughout that chat after we arrived in America. But I couldn't get rid of the unsettling sensation. This elderly guy posed a threat. Following our meal, Jack said someone must go.